Recognized.
This week, Democrats have a bill on the floor to, quote, address inflation and help bring costs down for Americans, end quote. Just last week, President Biden stated that inflation is his, quote, top domestic priority. So let's talk about inflation if we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the stats. The president announced that his focus was going to be on the economy this month. And to kick it off, his Treasury Secretary, Secretary Yellen, finally admitted that she was wrong when she called inflation transitory last year. So the Biden administration and congressional Democrats, I'd like to say to you, welcome to the party. You're a year late. The American people have been feeling this pain of inflation, and I'm glad you're coming to the realization that we have to do something about it. And Republicans welcome the conversation. Inflation has surged to a 40-year high. Stats across the board are terrible. Everyday goods and services are more unaffordable today, especially for low and middle income Americans and those on fixed incomes. Skyrocketing consumer prices are outpacing wage gains. U.S. households will spend an extra $5,200 this year compared to last year for the same basket of goods and services they normally buy. The national average for the price of gasoline has reached a staggering $5 a gallon. And that's, if that weren't bad enough, our economy is now shrinking. The U.S. GDP came in at a negative 1.4% in the first quarter of this year. That is problematic. That is bad. Democrats want to blame everything from Putin to so-called corporate profiteering for the inflation crisis. They're still looking for who did it. Well, guess what, folks? The call's coming from within the House. They're the ones that put this on the American people. This is all the results of Democrats' bad economic policies. And this crisis is of their own making. The American people know it. They see it. They feel it. They experience it. In a recent poll released by the Wall Street Journal, 83% of respondents rated current economic conditions as poor or not good. This is the result of Democrat economic policies. Since they control the fullness of the federal government, they've put their economic policies into place, and we're living with the bad consequences. All across the board, inflation is way up. In another poll released by Real Clear Politics, 60% of the American people disapprove specifically of President Biden's handling of the economy. So what's Democrats' strategy? Well, it's to distract struggling families with this bill that we have on the floor today. A bill that might sound good, but does nothing to bring down consumer prices or help struggling families. So let's talk about the contents of the bill. So let's start. Republicans support improving diversity in financial services, but H.R. 2543, this bill, misses the mark. Committee Democrats had the opportunity to work with Republicans on a bipartisan legislative package to achieve that goal. In fact, 5 of the bills that make up this package received some Republican support, either in markup, in committee, or on the floor in previous Congresses. But instead of working with Republicans, committee Democrats injected this package with another 8 partisan poison pills. First, this bill blatantly politicizes the Federal Reserve. In fact, it takes the Fed, it tasks the Fed with a third mandate. And that third mandate is to close socioeconomic disparities instead of focusing on what we've asked the Fed to focus on, which is price stability and maximum employment possible. So much for the president saying he's not going to politicize the Fed or he's going to respect the Fed's independence. This bill goes completely counter to that. This bill will make credit more expensive and less accessible to those who need it most. This bill will also pile regulatory costs on small businesses, forcing them to divert resources from business operations to report on diversity and inclusion metrics outlined in this bill. Currently, businesses can self-assess the makeup of their workforce. This bill would impose a one-size-fits-all mandate on all job creators, regardless of size, geographic location, or business model. This bill is a boon for litigious trial lawyers, and it's a boon for them because they expand the ACOA, and it opens them up to new lawsuits. Businesses open to new lawsuits. And this creates uncertainty in the credit markets, ultimately increasing the cost of credit, making it more difficult to assess credit risks for financial institutions and businesses. Finally, while Americans are reeling from higher prices, this bill will make it more expensive for families to purchase a home. This bill will impose additional costs on creditors and servicers, which will inevitably be passed on to those applying for loans. Bottom line, this is just another attempt by House Democrats to divert voters' attention from the big issues of the day, and that is their dismal economic record that they've foisted upon the American people. So if House Democrats are serious about addressing inflation, as the Biden administration have claimed, and as the president has specifically said he's focused on this month, well, if they were serious, they would abandon a partisan messaging bill like the one we have on the House floor. I urge my colleagues to vote no and reserve the balance of my time.